feel like you cycle through some days where you feel like you have it all together, and then maybe most days where you feel like your life is overwhelming, chaotic, and you are not in control of it. If that is something that you feel, then I want to talk to you today about something that I think could really, really help with that and kind of give you the power to feel more in control and able to really conquer that chaos. My name is Lydia Kane. For those of you who don't know me, I am a licensed professional counselor. I am also the creator of Conquering the Chaos, where I help women create, build, and implement strategies to help them conquer the chaos in their lives. So this problem, I think we kind of all do it to a little bit of an extent, right? We create New Year's resolutions when you have all these things that we want to do, and then by the time it's February or January 4th, those things are not happening. And that's because life got in the way, that's because maybe we had our sights set too high, or it's because we weren't really paying attention to our actual needs and our actual needs at that time. And so the key to this, the secret to this, is that we really have to assess. We have to assess our needs. We have to assess how our plan is working for us or if it isn't. And we have to assess how those needs are changing. We also have, and what I mean by that, how they're changing is what is your capacity to reach those things. And so I want to break that down a little bit. So one problem with, just picking or following somebody else's plan on how they take care of themselves, or just picking something that you found on Pinterest, or doing what your friend or your neighbor does because they seem like they have their lives all together, that won't work. And it might work for a couple days, but it's not going to work for very long, because what their needs are not what your needs are. And what your needs are today could be different from tomorrow. And they will certainly be different from 3 months from now, because we're humans, because our needs change, because life happens, and that's okay. You don't have to stick to the same routine of taking care of yourself day after day after day after day, because it's not going to work. You're not going to get the results that you really, really want. And a lot of times with those New Year's resolutions, we give ourselves the top of where we want to be. And that's great, because we know the kind of person we want to be. We know that we want to be a person who works out 5 times a week, or a person who meditates daily, or a person who does their devotional every morning at 6 a.m. Those are great goals to have, but we have to pay attention. We have to assess where we are in order to get there. And so it might not be all or nothing at the beginning. And I think that's what we kind of tend to do. So one of the ways that we assess incorrectly is that we choose to do somebody else's plan and think that it's going to work for us because we see how well it's working for them. Take notes from them, that's wonderful. But the way I experienced this and the way that I learned this was I was really, really following an influencer, and I loved her. I have since kind of changed my mind on that, but I was following her during my pregnancy. And during my pregnancy, my anxiety was out the window. It was really high. And because of that, I eventually got that under control to an extent, with a lot of support from my support people. But that made me very concerned about postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and what else could kind of set in for me during maternity leave. And so I really, really assessed what my needs were going to be. And I realized that following that influencer, her stuff was not taking my needs into consideration. It was not talking to moms who were on maternity leave. It was not specific to Lydia Kane. It was what worked for her and was what was being magnified. And so I had to kind of step back and say, what are my actual needs? What do I think I'm going to need during maternity leave? And some of this I talked about with my own counselor, and we kind of arrived at what I might need. One of those big things was knowing who my support people were, knowing who can I call and say, can you come over and, hold Jackson for 15 minutes while I take a shower, or let me get a nap in, or let me get it. Like, I needed to know who those people were so that in those hard moments I could lean on them. I also knew that it was not going to be a priority for me to work out 5 times a week. It just wasn't. I did go on a lot of walks because I know that that helps me mentally, but it was more for the mental, not so much for the physical activity, which is still important to me. But that goal of working out 5 times a day, 5 times a day, 5 times a week was never going to be a priority for me during maternity leave. My priority was to take the best care of Jackson that I could while not losing myself. And so the way that I did that was I really narrowed down what my priorities, my needs, my capacity was going to be. And my plan to stay sane through maternity leave was to brush my teeth each day, was to wash my face, and was to change my clothes from out of what I slept in. And that really helped me stay sane because I wasn't trying to do all of these things. I was paying attention to the capacity that I had, which was very small, because all of my care was going towards my baby. So I could only give myself so much, but I wanted to make the most out of what I was doing. And so I really used that assessment process to decide, okay, here are the most important things for me to feel like a human, to not feel like I've lost myself, to just kind of stay on top of it. And those things helped. And my time to go wash my face before bedtime became such a sacred time. It was the best. And that's what I did during that time. That was how I assessed what my needs were because I knew that her plan wasn't going to work for me. I also, throughout that process, continued assessing and paying attention to how well that was working for me. Did I need to add in anything different? Did I need to, change? Did I need to do less or more? And so eventually I was able to add walking and running into my plan because eventually I figured out nursing. I, figured out how to be a new mom, and I could handle a little bit more than only brushing my teeth, washing my face, and changing my clothes. I could do a little bit more because I had a little bit more control over the chaos that was going on. And so I was able to really amp that up. And I chose walking and running because it did a couple of different things for me. It was big for me. I'm not saying, walking is great. Love it. It might not be the best for you, but why it works for me is because I got some time out of the house to be by myself because during those times, Adam would watch Jackson. If he wasn't able to, sometimes I would take Jackson with me, and I was still able to kind of get that fresh air, get that movement in my body, and have a little bit of that. But it was even better during those times where I got to just have 30 minutes or an hour alone and to myself and not responsible for anybody else. And that was big for me during that time. It still is big for me, but during that time it was like essential. The other thing that I paid attention to in the assessment was that I started to notice that something that was kind of making things harder was me Googling everything. Because as a new mom, you have a lot of questions and you're up late at night and Google is right there. And me and Adam both started to kind of recognize that that was not super helpful to me. And so I had to kind of pay attention to what that did to me and kind of curb that a little bit. And I did. So the point is my assessment continued throughout that season of maternity leave. I prepped it beforehand as well to kind of think about what will I need, what will satisfy my needs, and what can I handle? What's that capacity piece? And then I continued to assess, okay, how's that going? This is the same way that, your kids in school, their teachers might look at what's going on. We're going to lesson plan and we're going to, assess what they need to know for this test. And then how are they learning it throughout? How is this strategy working? Or the same way that your doctor might diagnose an issue. You wouldn't want to walk into a doctor's office with a brand new issue and them say, okay, here's my assessment of your diagnosis, right? They didn't take any time to assess. So how do they know what's wrong? How do they know what's going to fix it? So we have to do that assessment piece, learn the symptoms, learn the struggles that it's causing, and then try the treatment and see what works. And if something isn't working, or if it's actually making the problem worse, like Googling at 3 a.m., then we need to change and keep assessing until we find the right situation. And then the tricky part is we do all of this work and then a new season starts. Then it turned into, okay, going back to work and being a working mom. Whole other process. So the hard news is you're never going to be done assessing. But the good news is the more you do it, and if you take the time this first time to kind of sit down, think through it, and really look at it, it's going to be easier and easier and easier as you move on. So assessment is the third pillar of my framework for conquering the chaos. If you'd like to hear about the other ones that I've already covered or the fourth one that's left, then click on the link that will be left below, and you'll get that guide and framework sent directly to you in an email. I think that's it. Yeah. So have a great day, and thank you.